of other kids. We had all been abandoned by our parents. Most of us had been found. I wasn't your ordinary child. There was something very, very special about me, but I ended up getting sold to rich parents for $1 million. How, you may ask? Well, make sure you stay tuned till the end of the video. Before I go on, also make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more awesome content. Growing up, I was an orphan. I lived in an orphanage with dozens of other kids. We had all been abandoned by our parents. Most of us had been found as babies on the doorstep of the orphanage by Mrs. Harrison. She was the one who took care of us all and raised us. I loved her so much, but I really wished I had a normal life with normal parents. Growing up as an orphan was so hard. At school, believe it or not, a ton of kids would tease me, saying my parents never loved me. When I told Mrs. Harrison about this, she was furious, and she said not to listen to those bullies. Of course my parents loved me. They just had their own reasons for leaving me. I asked Mrs. Harrison about my real parents one day. Why did they abandon me here? I asked her. Mrs. Harrison looked uncomfortable. Well, Charlotte, I'm not too sure why. Why not? I asked in confusion. They left you here with only a small note. It said, "Take care of her, please." And that was it. No signature, nothing else. You are such a tiny wee thing, said Mrs. Harrison. And Charlotte, don't think your parents abandoned you. They loved you. Darling, of course they did. But sometimes it's hard, and they must have thought you'd have had a better life with us, rather than with them. I went quiet after that, and we hugged. But it still bothered me. Was I not good enough for my real parents or something? What was the real reason? Meanwhile, years and years passed, and no one decided to adopt me. Many couples came to the orphanage, but it always seemed pure coincidence that they didn't want me. When I was a baby, couples came, but they were only looking for a son. As I grew into a toddler, couples came, who were only looking for a baby. As I reached
Check your gear and weapons. We go soon. Dropping into the AO.
She was so generous, and I absolutely adored her. I thought she was the prettiest person I had ever seen, and whenever she came, I would always fight to be closest to her. Sometimes she would take us on dates, to supervise, but sometimes she would take us to the park.
Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
And she had taken us to the park where an art festival was taking place. We strolled through the park, and there were many artists displaying their paintings.
Practice is
I
over.
trailed
It's a real
little
fight
further
begins
from the
now.
group, and suddenly I met this old man, sitting to the side of the festival on a stool. He had a canvas in front of him and seemed to be wondering what to paint. I noticed he had on a beanie and sunglasses, and I remember thinking he almost looked like he was hiding his identity. I walked over and said hello. Well, as soon as the old man saw my face, he seemed to have an aha moment. Please, young woman, may I paint your
Battle
portrait?
Royale.
He asked.
This is
Avoid the gas.
I had nothing
Get to
else
the safe
do,
zone.
and it would be interesting to see how the final painting turned out. So I agreed. And next minute, he had me sitting on another stool opposite to him and told me to stay very still. He asked me to look off to the right with my head towards the open. After a while, Aunt Connie found me. Where have you been? She asked, slightly panicked. We've been looking for you everywhere. This man is painting a portrait of me, I said. As I spoke, I moved to look at Aunt Connie, but suddenly the artist raised his hand and pointed to the right again. despite being only 15 years old at the time. The famous artist I learned later on, his name, D'Andralio, named the painting Wise Child. My face became one of the most famous faces in the world. At first, I had no idea. I didn't even know it was a famous artist who had painted me. But one day, it came on the news. Mrs. Harrison immediately cried out to everyone to hurry to the
Primary objective is to eliminate all targets.
in front of the TV, shocked to see my face was all over the screen. It talked
Did I get
about
it?
how the painting had
Yes!
so much, and
Oh
that
my
everyone
god,
was
dude.
looking
I
for
landed
the
it
wise
multiple
child,
times.
as they called me. It gave a phone number for anyone who had any information, and we instantly called the number. I was so honored to have been painted by the famous artist D'Andralio. Mrs. Harrison ended up talking to an agent, and I immediately got booked onto a talk show to tell my life story. I was so shocked by how fast things had happened, and before I knew it, I was getting ready to go on live TV on a talk show. I was so nervous. The interviewer asked me a ton of questions about my life, and when they found out I was an orphan, well, everybody went mad. There was a huge search to see if they could find my parents. Honestly, I wasn't that bothered. Sure, it would be nice to meet them, but they weren't my real parents. They had abandoned me. The people I considered to be the closest thing to my parents were Mrs. Harrison and Aunt Connie. They were the ones who had loved me and cared for me growing up. But then, Mrs. Harrison told me something that completely shocked me. One day she came into my bedroom and told me she had something important to say. Your parents have come forward, she told me. I couldn't believe it. Mrs. Harrison told me a couple had come forward and confessed I was their daughter. I was so shocked. Why would they come back after all this time? That's when I realized the fame. Why else? They were just using me. You see, after I discovered my newfound fame, I reached out to D'Andralio. He actually ended up giving me hundreds of thousands of dollars, as he said that was my share of the profit from his sales, and I deserved it for being such a good muse. The parents arrived, and they were all over me, all lovey-dovey, but I was still hesitant. I actually remember thinking when I first saw them that I didn't think they really looked like me. Sure, we all had the same dark hair, but our faces were really different. I didn't worry over it too much, though. We missed you so much, they cried when they saw me. I had a million questions to ask them. Please, can you just tell me, why did you leave me? We had no money, said my mom. We really wish we could have kept you. You have no idea, but we knew this life was better for you. And we were right, weren't we? You're rich now. You're famous. I thought that was a strange thing to say, but I admit, my heart welled up to think that maybe, finally, I would have a proper family. I ended up leaving the orphanage and moving with them. I didn't really want to, if I was being completely honest. I was really going to miss Mrs. Harrison and Aunt Connie, but I supposed I should be grateful for the chance to live with my parents. This was every orphan's dream, after all. At first, things were okay, I guess. We didn't really get along too well, and they always seemed to be busy with their work. I was kind of suspicious, too. What sort of work did they mean? It seemed kind of shady to me. And plus, they were always asking me about my money. They wanted to know how much I had. They even wanted to know my bank details. I didn't give it to them, of course, but I did tell them how much money I had. Well, they seemed to love me even more after that. So I thought. Then, to my surprise, my parents woke me up one morning to tell me that they had sold me off to a rich couple for $1 million. This rich couple slowly used me for my fame. I'd corresponded on Twitter for scenarios, and they were basically going to make me their slave so they could make money off of me. I couldn't believe my own parents would do that to me. You can't sell me, I yelled at them. Well, too bad, said Dad. You're going. You need the money. You're going whether you like it or not, Charlotte. Before I knew it, they had organized a car to take me to my new parents. I was so terrified. I didn't want to live with two strangers. Right then, I wanted Aunt Connie and Mrs. Harrison, and I wanted to be back at the orphanage with my kids. Years ago, if you were to tell me that I would have preferred to live at the orphanage than with my parents, I would have laughed in your face. But it was true. I didn't love my parents.
What?
Eventually, I managed to escape. As the car
Freaking
slowly picked me
hardcore.
up and they were placing me in the back seat,
Look
I
at you,
managed to
you're
slip
so
through their fingers and went back to the orphanage. I ran ran
This is
as
the
fast
gulag.
as I could.
Survive
because
and
I
you
was
can be
scared they
deployed.
were going to come back for me and take me to this rich couple. When I got back, Aunt Connie and Mrs. Harrison
A
were
fight
so
has
shocked
started.
to see me. But once I
Get
explained
ready,
everything
you're
to them,
next.
they immediately called the police. I still had a strand of hair of my parents on my clothing, and we did a DNA test, which proved we actually weren't related. We had faked it all. Soon the police found them, and they were arrested, as well as the rich couple for buying a child. Finally,
Win here and
Aunt
you return
Connie
to the
ended
front
up
line.
adopting
You
me.
lose,
My
your
life
fight is over.
much better now. I love living with her,
Beat
and
them
since
down
she
or
lives
capture the
opposite to
objective.
the orphanage, I still get to see Mrs. Harrison and friends all the time.
Back to
As
basics.
for my legacy as the
They hit us
president
hard
of
that
Wise
night.
Child
We will
painting, my face has changed a bit since I've grown up, but every now and then a fan will walk up to me and ask for my autograph. It's very strange.
Put great writing to work with Grammarly, your personal writing assistant. Grammarly can rewrite full sentences to make sure your message comes through clearly.
Hi, I'm Jordan, but most people call me Peanut Head. I've always been smaller than everyone else my age. The girls in my class often laughed at me because I'm so much smaller than they are. I'm really skinny too. Because I look so much different than other kids my age, I've been bullied a lot. Since kindergarten, in fact. Anyway, at middle school, I made some friends. They were 4 boys around my age, but they treated me like I was their servant. They were Justin, Carl, Brad, and Adam. Adam was like the group leader. He made me do everything for him in class. I had to sharpen his pencils, take his trash to the garbage can, and buy his lunch. Sometimes, I even had to give him my own lunch. Not to mention the homework. I was like some sort of homework machine for Adam, and it was often difficult to balance his
Holding
work
for
and
deployment.
mine.
Take this time
Before
to
I
warm
continue, please don't forget to like the video and hit that subscribe button. Doing so will cause one awful bully in this world to lose his or her power. It really works. I continued doing things for Adam and the others because I didn't want to be the lonely boy who had no friends. Although they treated me like an outsider, we did have fun sometimes. We'd hang out and play sports and video games at Adam's house. I felt that if I continued to listen to Adam, I'd eventually be fully accepted and treated like an equal. One day, we were sitting in science class when a new teacher walked in. Her name was Miss Winters, and she seemed pretty cool and funny. Adam always tested new teachers to see how far he could push them. Sometimes he scared them away, and they never even came back. "Miss Winters?" he said. "Yes, dear," Miss Winters answered. "Someone in this room smells like fart. And, I mean, this room smelled perfectly fine until you got here," he said. The class burst out laughing. "Oh, really? I smell something too, but that only happened when you opened your mouth. Are you sure you don't want to go get that checked out?" She
Avoid the
replied
gas.
with a calm
Get to the safe
smile on
zone.
her face. We were flabbergasted. No teacher had ever been able to match Adam's wit or ridiculousness before. Adam turned red and rolled his eyes like he didn't care, but everyone could tell that he was very embarrassed. After school, Adam called all of us together. "Don't you guys think that new teacher, Miss Winters, is the worst?" he said. "Yeah," everyone said, but I knew they disagreed. "We're gonna get back at her tomorrow, but I need to know that everyone is on board. Can I count on you guys?" he said. "Well, what are we going to do to her?" asked Carl. "I'll let you know tomorrow," he said, and then walked off. The next day, Miss Winters' class was fun. Adam got silent for the whole hour, but everyone else had a great time. At the end of class, she gave everyone candy, told us we were wonderful kids, and said she couldn't wait to teach us tomorrow. I thought that she was so nice, and that we had no reason to seek revenge. I was afraid about whatever idea Adam would come up with.
Primary objective
When
is to
school was
eliminate
over,
all targets.
Adam called all of us together again. "Look what I got," he said excitedly. He opened his backpack and pulled out 2 big bottles of rubbing alcohol. "What are you gonna do? Disinfect the classroom?" Justin laughed. "No, stupid. I also have a lighter," Adam replied. I knew this was going to be bad. Mrs. Winters also teaches upper school chemistry. She's responsible for the chemistry lab and all her things are in there. We're going to break into that room when everyone is left and we're gonna set it on fire. They'll think it was her fault and that she left something on. Then she's gonna get fired. It's a great plan. he said, then laughed like a maniac. I knew that this was wrong to do, but I wanted to fit in, so I waited with them until everyone left the school. When it was time, we broke into the chemistry lab, and Adam began throwing rubbing alcohol all over the curtains and the papers. I stared for a few minutes, then decided that I didn't want to be involved, even if it meant being lonely. I calmly walked out of the room and out of the building. As I reached outside, I heard the fire alarm go off. I decided to take a stroll in the park to clear my head, and then I walked home. When I got home, my mom was waiting near the entrance. "Jordan, I was so worried about you." She hugged me. "Mom, ew, what's gotten into you? What's going on?" I asked. "You didn't hear? Your school is on fire. I was so scared that you were still in there," she shouted. I went to the living room and watched my burning school on the television screen. Oh my gosh, I thought. They were only supposed to burn down one classroom. How did this happen? I had a greater scare when the news anchor came on and said,
"The camera footage has been distorted a bit, but our experts are working on it. We believe we have found the culprit as,
They're ready
according
to
to the
fight.
school security guard, there was no one else at the school."
Words.
They
More
played
rocks.
a blurry
Makes
video,
the wait
but
go
it
by
was clear
faster.
that the boy in the video was me. Luckily, my mom didn't realize. But
Here
it
we
would
go.
be only a matter of time until the authorities
Get
figured
ready,
it
you're
out.
next.
And I would be blamed for burning down the entire school when I really did nothing but walk away. I was terrified, and I wanted to cry. My brain was running at 10,000 miles per hour. I didn't want to get caught or sent to a juvenile detention center. What was the punishment for burning down a school anyway? I had to do something quickly. I decided to pack a bag and run away. I took all the money I had been saving
Win
in a
here
box
and
under
you
my
return
desk
to the
and
front line.
stuffed it into
You
my
lose,
bag.
your fight is over.
I waited until about midnight when everyone in
Earn
my
your way
house was
out.
asleep, and I snuck out. I went to a bus station and bought a ticket to the state next door. Luckily, nobody asked me any questions about why I was out all by myself. I got onto the bus, sat at the back next to a window, and fell asleep. When I woke up, the driver had turned on the radio and everyone was listening to the news. I was about to doze off again when I heard the news reporter say,
We have identified the arsonist who set fire to an entire middle school yesterday. His name is Jordan Thompson, and he's only 12 years old. Who would have thought that a child could be so destructive? His parents were questioned, and they have informed us that their son has run away. This is definitely evidence that he is guilty.
I was so scared that I hid my face for the rest of the bus ride. When I arrived in the other state, the reality hit me that I was all alone. I had no home, no bedroom, no bathroom, no loving parents. It was just me against the world, but I had to be strong. I went to buy some hair dye and some colored contact lenses. I was sure that my face would be all over the news soon, and I needed to change my appearance quickly. When I bought the products, I went to a random public bathroom, which, luckily for me, was empty. I dyed my blonde hair black and put some brown contact lens over my gray eyes. After that, I was feeling hungry, so I bought a snack and just walked around aimlessly. Nobody knew who I was, and no one could identify me, so that made me feel at peace a bit. After feeling like a tourist for a while, I felt really tired. I came across a park, so I walked inside and sat on a bench. My eyes felt really heavy,
Warm up while
and
you can.
eventually I fell
Deploy
asleep.
soon.
When I woke up, the temperature had dropped. I looked around and noticed an old lady sitting next to me. "Hi, dear. Where are your parents? Are you okay?" she asked. "They're in another state, and no, I'm not okay. I don't have anywhere to sleep tonight," I answered. I hated lying, and technically, that was the truth. "Oh no, dear child, you can stay with me. Let's go home," she replied. She got up and I followed her. She lived just around the block. Her house was very cute. It was only 1 story high and quite small, but she had a lovely garden with many different types of flowers planted outside. My name is Martha, by the way. My son Robert moved out a few years ago, and I live all by myself. He has a family, and he never comes to visit me.
Enemy dropping
I'm
into
grateful
the
for the
AO.
company.
Training
He can
is
have his
over.
old room,
Time to see
she
what you
said.
have learned.
I felt extremely lucky. For the next few weeks, Martha treated me like her own grandson. She made the most excellent meals ever, and she never asked for much in return. I'd clean the house and water the plants in the garden. I also did the grocery shopping so she could stay home and relax. I missed my parents dreadfully, but I knew it was too risky to go home.
Battle
I
Royale.
started to feel convinced that
Avoid
this
the
would be
gas.
my home
Get to the safe
forever.
zone.
But everything changed one afternoon. I was in the garden watering the plants when I noticed a random policeman walking up and down the block. The next day, I saw this same man walking near the house, but he was wearing plain clothes. This time, he looked at me suspiciously. It happened again for the next 3 days, so I was convinced that they knew who I was. I felt really bad to do this to Martha, but I stole a few dollars from her purse and left the house while she was sleeping. I wrote her a note thanking her for all
You're
she
clear
had done
to
for me.
engage all
I
targets.
let her know that I took some money and that I would return it to her whenever I could. I walked quickly to the bus station and bought another bus ticket out of the state. It felt like I spent days on the bus because whenever I reached one state, I took a bus to another. When I was 7 states away from home, I decided to try to look around for somewhere to stay. I went to a park hoping to meet another kind old lady like Martha, but I had no luck. I wandered around for a long time until I was finally so exhausted that I collapsed in front of an old-looking building. I woke up to someone tugging at my shirt. "Hey, little man, what are you doing sleeping out there?" A badly dressed, untidy man asked. "I don't have anywhere to stay. My parents are far away and I'm all alone," I replied. "Come with me. You can stay with me and my friends. It's not a 5-star hotel, but it's home," he said. I don't know why, but I felt like there was something about him I could trust. I followed him until we reached an area under a bridge. There were at least 20 huge cardboard boxes scattered around. "This is home. I'm Henry, by the way," he said. There was an entire homeless community. I looked around in awe. "Hey, everyone," Henry shouted. "We have a new friend." Everyone came out of their boxes to greet me. The next few days were weird. It took me a while to get used to this type of life, but the people were so friendly. And because I'm a child, they treated me kindly. I was able to do a few little jobs here and there to make some money. I still live in this community under the bridge, and I've decided that I will stay there until I can make enough money to leave the country. I probably have to wait until I turn 18. Maybe after that, I'll contact my parents to let them know I'm okay. What would you do if you were me? Where do you think I should go? Comment below. "Where do I turn left?" I asked my mom while I was driving. She pulled the map out and started scanning it with her eyes. It was getting kind of dark and I was tired, so I really just wanted to get to the new place. "Turn left after that big building over there, Pumpkin," she said. "Are you excited?" she asked me. I nodded. I really was excited because I hadn't seen one of my best friends in ages. You see, ever since I was very young, my mom and I moved to different cities and towns every month or so. It's all I've ever known, and I have friends scattered all over the place. Hey there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I took our suitcases out of the trunk of the car while my mom opened the door
Welcome
to
to
our
the
little
Gulag.
temporary home
If you
and
survive,
carried them in.
you earn your freedom.
After saying goodnight to my mom, I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow. I woke up the next morning to the smell of eggs and sizzling bacon. After scarfing down my breakfast,
They're
I
ready to
gave my
fight.
mom a kiss on the forehead and
Get
left
ready,
to meet
you're
my
next.
friend while she unpacked a few essentials. I met my friend Jackson at the basketball court where we used to play
You
when
win
we
this
were
fight,
younger.
then you return to the
We
front line.
hugged, and then
But
of
if you
course he
lose, you're
challenged
done.
me to see who managed to shoot the most baskets.
Earn your way out.
"So, how's school, man?" I asked him hours later when we were just sitting around chilling. "School's boring as always. You're lucky you're homeschooled," he replied. He stood up suddenly and asked me if I wanted to go to a party. I hadn't been to many parties, so of course I wanted to. Jackson and I pulled up to a house that was absolutely trashed. There were cups and food containers all over the front lawn, and the music was booming out the windows. Inside, you could hardly tell what arm belonged to whom, because everyone was tangled up dancing. We mostly just vibed in the back, but we went to the front when we saw fists start to fly around. A fight broke out, and everyone around was watching. A few minutes later, the door opened and 3 cops came in, saying neighbors made a noise complaint. But then, they saw the fight and got a bit more aggressive. 2 of the cops grabbed the fighting guys, and one of them stayed behind. He looked at me, and I got chills. He looked sketchy, and something about him made me not trust him. I got so uncomfortable with him looking at me that I walked away. But before I could get to Jackson, he grabbed my arm and said, "You're coming with me, kid." I wanted to resist. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I saw Jackson and he mouthed, "Don't resist," to me. The cop put me in the back of his patrol car and snapped a picture of me, the flash blinding me. After a while, I noticed he wasn't following the other cop car anymore. He stopped the car on the highway and got out. This is the end, I thought. Shouldn't have gone to that damn party. Who knows what this creep is gonna do to me? He opened the back door and shoved a blindfold over my eyes. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" I would have punched him, but I was handcuffed. "Shush," he said. I felt the car moving again and stopped after what felt like a few minutes. I heard my door open and someone pulled me out roughly. They led me up a couple steps and then pushed me onto a chair, where they tied me up to the chair. I could tell there was a bright light over my head, and then someone ripped the blindfold from my eyes. I took a second to adjust, and then saw a man around 50 years old staring at me. "What do you want from me? I don't have any money," I shouted at him, but he just chuckled. "Kid, I have plenty of money myself. Do I look poor to you?" he asked, but I remained silent. He approached me and pulled my ear when we were face to face. "What I want is for you to rot in jail for what you did to my wife. I want you to feel as alone as I do every single day because of you." "You have the wrong guy.
Training
I've
is
never
over.
hurt anyone."
Time to see what you
I
have
tried
learned.
to defend myself, but he wouldn't listen. "You're a murderer," he spat. His phone started ringing, so he went outside to pick up the call. While he was out, I started struggling to escape. The friction the ropes made on my skin burned, but I kept trying to wiggle out until I got one hand free, then the other, and then I untied my feet. I tiptoed out of there as fast as I could, and when I was running out of the building, I heard the man
Battle
shouting,
Royale.
"Get him!"
Be advised,
I could
gas
feel
is
my
closing
heart
in. Proceed
beating
to the
out of
safe
my
zone.
chest as I ran, trying to find help. After running for a while, I found a place that looked familiar, and it didn't take me too long to find home. It was very late, but of course my mom was waiting up for me. She freaked out when she saw me because my wrists were red with rope burns, and my clothes were all messed up. I started explaining to her what happened, and I could tell she wanted to be mad at me going to that party. But when I told her about the cops, her expression changed. As I told her about how I was basically kidnapped, her eyes grew wide, and the color fled her face when I told her about the man accusing me of murdering his wife. A few minutes after I was done talking, she was still zoned out. I waved my hand in front of her eyes, and she snapped back into reality. "I need to tell you something." She began to tell me the story that would change my life forever. My mom worked as a maid in her 20s at a huge mansion. Her job was normal, but she knew that behind closed doors, there was sketchy business. The man who had me kidnapped was the owner of the mansion, and he had a beautiful wife who kept locked up like a princess because she was his treasure. Sometime after my mom started working there, the man's wife got pregnant, and the whole mansion was both in chaos and
Welcome to the
extremely well
Gulag.
organized.
If you survive,
The man
you
became
earn your freedom.
obsessed with his wife's pregnancy, making sure everything was always perfect for her and that she was safe at all times. But when the baby was born, the man grew to dislike his own son. He
They're
felt
ready
his
to
wife
fight.
was neglecting him to take care of
Get
the
ready,
baby.
you're next.
The man felt powerless because there was nothing he could do. 1 year later, he and his wife argued. He told his wife how he felt about the baby, and his wife was so upset that she snatched up the baby and drove to her parents' house, trying to escape him. Some say that because tears blinded her, she got into a terrible car crash that eventually caused her death. While she was hospitalized, she called my
Win
mom
this
to her
fight and you
and gave
return
her
to the front
plenty of
line.
money to
But if you
last her
lose,
a
you're
lifetime,
done.
and then some to take her baby and run away.
It's time.
The
Breaks.
wife knew her husband would hurt the baby if
Lost
she
the
were to
fight.
die, and she was right. She kissed the baby one last time on the forehead, and my mom ran away with it. "You're the baby, Aiden," my mom said. I sat in front of her, wide-eyed and mouth agape. "What?" was the only thing I managed to say. "Your father is a very dangerous man. He believes in his sick mind that you, a poor defenseless baby at the time, killed his wife. We've moved from place to place your whole life because if they get you, they want to throw you in jail for the rest of your life," my mom said. "He's a very dangerous man, the leader of a notorious gang." My mom reached out to grab my hand, but I stood up and walked out of the house. I walked through the dark city, just trying to clear my head. I didn't know much, but I felt that everything I thought I knew was wrong. My mom raised me, and she will always be my mom, but she's not my biological mom. Was I to blame for the accident? What was my father going to do to me? Would I ever be safe? These and so many other thoughts clouded my head. After a few hours, I walked back home, deflated. I was surprised to find the door of my house open. I called out for my mom, but there was no response. I noticed a piece of paper on the dining table. It was a note saying, "Come get her," and an address. I crumpled up the note in my hand. He took her. I ran as fast as I could to the direction. It was an abandoned building just outside the city center. I could see a faint light coming from inside, so I jumped through an open window and snuck around until I found the source. My father was sitting at a small table, apparently waiting. When I found my mom tied up to a chair, I wanted to run into the room and save her immediately. But I saw there were at least 5 of my father's gangsters standing nearby. I took a deep breath and walked in as calmly as I could. "So you came after all. I wasn't sure you would," said my estranged father. "Come on, let's settle this," I said, rolling up my sleeves, ready to fight.
with deployment to the
"You
war zone.
think I'm going to fight you, kid?
Enemy soldier incoming.
No, we will settle this like gentlemen," my father said. He snapped his fingers and 3 of his goons approached. One carrying a table, another carrying 2 chairs, and a third one carrying a chessboard. "You want to play chess?" I asked him, thinking he was just trying to catch me off guard. I mean, what kind of mafia leader settles things with a game of chess? "When I win, you'll
Battle
go to jail
Royale.
for the rest of your life.
Be
And
advised,
the maid,"
gas is
he pointed
closing
at
in.
my mom,
Proceed to
"will
the safe
join
zone."
my dear wife in the afterlife." I gulped nervously. "What happens if I win?" I asked. "You won't," he said simply. He glanced at his bodyguards with a smirk, thinking I probably didn't even know how to play. But I did. When I turned 10 years old, my mom gave me an old fancy-looking chessboard with all the beautifully carved pieces inside. She taught me how to play, and I played even when she wasn't there. I found the game exhilarating. The first moves I made were almost reflexes. I wasn't even thinking. It felt like someone was guiding my hand. My father's brow wrinkled, and he looked at me in disbelief. He began. He was shocked at the moves I was making.
Eliminate
He
all
began making
targets
his
in the
moves
AO.
as if to see what I would do next. He moved one piece, and before I realized what I was saying, it was out. "Checkmate," I said. "I won." He looked at me with an indescribable mix of emotions in his eyes. Eyes that before seemed empty. "You play just like my wife," he said. I smirked. I played like both my mom and my mother. The 3 guards suddenly strutted toward
Ah,
me.
the sniper!
I put my hands up to block any punches I felt coming my way, but they just stood behind me,
Welcome
and
to the
staring
Gulag.
at my father, they
If you
crossed their
survive,
arms.
you earn your freedom.
"You're weak," one of them said. Before I knew it, my father lunged at me, wanting to hurt me, but one of the men pulled him off me, and the other pushed me away. They grabbed my father by the arms while he yelled and cursed at them. They threw him out the doors and locked them. "You beat your father, so now we're loyal to you, and to you only," one of them said. He was going to say more, but I immediately ordered him to untie my mom. I went up to the window, and I was face to face with my father. "You'll pay for this, you little punk," he said. "I'll get back everything you've taken from me, even if it's the last thing I do." "Oh yeah?" I asked. "You and what army? 'Cause I have one, but you're all by yourself." I laughed at my father's anger. I felt absolutely no pity or sadness for him. He despised me from the moment I was born, and he put my mom in danger, not to mention my biological mother. He didn't want me as an heir, but that's exactly what I ended up becoming. My mom and I moved into the old mansion. It was much bigger and more luxurious than anything we could ever afford when I was young. The best part is that I finally saw my mom making friends, being part of a community. I never noticed just how alone she was in order to protect me. Now, we finally have a forever home.
It was a normal day at school when I had to go to the guidance counselor to talk about applying to colleges. I went in super excited and ready because I had been told that with my grades and accomplishments, all I had to do was pick. My guidance counselor greeted me at the door to her office saying, "Hi, sweetie, let's get started." Before this crazy story continues, please take a second to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I began babbling on and on about what I wanted to do in the future, and then she brought my attention to college essays. My shoulders fell and my smile collapsed. Ugh, I really didn't want to write one. She began explaining to me the different topics I could talk about, and I knew what she had in mind without her needing to say it. My adoption. It could really make you stand out, she said. I replied, I know, it's just not something we talk about at home. The interaction reminded me of when I was little and nobody believed I was even related to my siblings. At birthday parties, they would always ask me, where's your mommy? When she was standing right next to me. My adoption was never a secret because it was obvious. I looked completely different from my family. When I got home, I brought it up during dinner. My parents visibly choked on their food. Wasn't that weird? I mean, it's obvious to all of us. Why is it taboo? I didn't want to make them uncomfortable, so I just changed the subject. Now, don't imagine the conversation was ever lively. It wasn't like that at my house. Even as a kid, I was always running around and trying to live to the fullest, while my family was always tame and my siblings preferred to walk. After dinner, I began looking through photo albums. The dusty ones at the back of the shelves we never really touched. I saw baby pictures of me and how young my mom and dad looked. I started digging through cabinets and drawers, trying to find my adoption papers or my birth certificate. Every time I thought I was finally pulling out the file I was looking for, it wasn't it. I was looking through my siblings' papers, which my organized parents kept in the same folder, but mine were missing. Wasn't that strange? I thought maybe they had mine separate because I was adopted, but why would they? I nearly turned the house upside down looking for those damn papers. Looking in every corner of the house, nothing. I was absent-mindedly scrolling on my laptop. I was stressed because that really could have been a good college essay. When I thought, why not Google myself? Who knows? Maybe I could find something. I typed my name in, honestly not expecting much, but what I saw changed my life. There was a website dedicated to me. Me. I thought, why would someone make a website for me? It had my full name, my birthday, and even the hospital I was born at. It had to be me. There was no way someone exactly like me just happened to be born at the same hospital with the same name. My eyes widened as I read the text. I was dead? How was that possible? I was very much alive, sitting there reading about my death? There were pictures of my family there, my biological family. They all looked like me in one way or another. Some had my same nose, and others my exact eye color and shape. But they gave me up for adoption. Why did they think I was dead? My head was spinning. I felt faint. Days passed, and I found myself looking at that family all the time. I downloaded the picture of them on my phone, and I'd look at it, wondering if they're like me in personality too. I almost got caught looking at this seemingly random group of people by my little sister, but I quickly turned my phone off. Even in my dreams, I saw these people. I had a dream that I came home from school, but that when I opened the door, I was in this warm, loud environment full of lively chatter, and that I found my biological family in the kitchen, making dinner together, like I always wanted to do with my family. When I woke up from that dream, I raced into my parents' bedroom and found them watching a movie together. Why does it say I'm dead on the internet? I asked them. I saw the look they shared and immediately knew I was right to be suspicious. Well, I demanded. I know I sounded spoiled talking to my parents like that, but I was scared, and I was right to be. My mom began tearing up, something I had never seen before. My dad started yelling at me for upsetting my mom and told me to get out. I huffed, and grabbing my keys ran out of the house. I took the bus for a few stops and then got off at the hospital where I was born. I went to the front desk and asked if they had any information about a baby who was declared dead some years ago. The lady at the desk shook her head and said the information was confidential, which, honestly, I expected. I then started crying. I mean, fully sobbing into my hands. That got her attention, and she assumed I was related to a baby that had died. She called over this old nurse and told me to follow her. The old lady was sketchy, to say the least. She looked really grumpy and suspicious of me as she walked to a room down the hall, very far from everything else. When she opened the door, I noticed it was quite a large room. She stood there watching me, but I asked her for privacy and she left. The room was full of filing cabinets. Oh my God, I thought. All of them had years on them and were full to the brim with files. Each one with a death certificate for a baby. I had a feeling there were just too many to be normal. The most recent file was from the day before. There was an address in there, and although I felt disrespectful, I snapped a picture of it. I also found my own file and took pictures of that, but I felt fine doing that because it was me. I went to the most recent couple's home. I don't know what But as soon as the door opened and a tired-looking woman stood before me, I told her everything. I started ranting about everything I had seen and even tearing up. I told her everything about the file cabinets, and she started tearing up too. She called her husband over and they both listened eagerly to what I had to say. When I was done ranting, they invited me into their home and we had a cup of coffee. I thanked them and the man said, "You gave us hope that we really will get to see our child. It's the least we can do." They told me everything that had occurred the day before, and the only thing that really stood out was the sketchy nurse. They described her to me in detail, shocking detail, because she was so sketchy that they remembered her perfectly well. Her name was on every single document in that room. So I connected the dots and realized she took the babies. The nurse must have sold those babies to other couples. She was stealing them and faking their deaths to get away with it. I couldn't believe how people could be so cruel. And even worse, I was one of those stolen babies. It was getting late, so I said goodbye to the couple and went home. When I arrived, my parents were waiting for me in the living room. My siblings were all upstairs, and they wanted to talk to me alone. My dad started asking me to stop talking about that subject because it made my mom uncomfortable. He didn't get a chance to get another word in because I interrupted them asking how they could
Eliminate
adopt
all
a
targets
stolen
in
baby.
the AO.
My mom broke down crying, and my dad comforted her. "You have no idea how hard we tried to have a baby," she cried. She said they felt guilty when she finally did get pregnant and had my siblings. Everything she said felt like a slap in the face. I demanded, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you take me to my family?" My mom screamed back, "Because we love you!" But did they really? They always treated me worse than the rest. So, did they really love me? I went up to my room and locked myself in. Morning came, but I didn't want to face my parents. I grabbed some cash and stuff I needed, shoved them in a bag, and climbed out of my window. I got lost for a while, but soon enough, I was in a cozy neighborhood. Very different from mine. There were loads of people on their gardens and lawns, or kids playing on the street. I walked around and felt like I was home. I knew there was a big chance that the family had moved, but my gut told me they were there. I stood in front of a beautiful house. I could hear chatter all the way from the sidewalk in front. When I rang the doorbell, the chatter stopped. My heart was beating out of my chest. What if they weren't here? What if they forgot about me? What if they just don't want me? What if my last thought was cut off by someone opening the door? In front of me stood a girl exactly like me a few years ago. I could tell she saw it too.
I know wuss!
She called out. A woman came to the door, wiping her hands on an apron. She had a smile on her face when she approached, but it fell when she saw me. She told the girl to go play with her brothers. I said, "Hi, my name is Anna. I know
Watch
this is
thinking,
super
get to
weird,
the target.
but I think I'm your daughter." The woman started tearing up. Out of nowhere, she pulled me into a tight hug. She then started asking me questions like my birthday, where I was born, etc. After I answered her questions, she grabbed my shoulders. "Well then, hi, my name is Louisa," she sobbed. "I'm your mother." Louisa led me into their home, and it was just as I had hoped it would be. I had two
Yeah,
little
sit
brothers,
down.
one little sister, and one older sister, who wasn't there at the time. My interaction with my father, Oscar, was similar to my mother's. We hugged, and he asked me a million questions. They invited me in to eat with them, which I gladly did. They didn't stop talking 1 second. All of them were so excited to have me there, and Louisa was constantly tearing up. That day, I went back to the hospital with my biological parents. We witnessed the police arresting the old nurse for everything she had done to innocent families. I sat down with Louisa and Oscar and we talked for a long time. Everything I learned about them made them better in my eyes than my parents. When I thought of my life with my parents, all I saw was gray. It was quiet and boring and nobody understood me there. But Louisa and Oscar's home was a dream. I decided then and there that I wanted to leave my parents and go live with Louisa and Oscar. I opened the door to my house as quietly as I could and slipped into my room unnoticed. I packed everything I needed into a big duffel bag. When I looked up, I saw my brother looking at me through the window. He was doing yard work, but paused when he saw me. He ran inside and into my mom, immediately asking a million questions. "Where are you going?" he asked, to which I responded, "None of your business." He then asked, "When are you coming back?" And when I didn't reply, he started screaming the question at me repeatedly. I finally snapped and yelled, "I'm not coming back!" He looked shocked. And then he ran out of my room. I thought I was good to go, but then my parents came into my room. "You're not going
Oh
anywhere,
my
you
God.
awful girl," my dad snapped at me, snatching the bag from my hands. "How could you leave us for strangers when we raised you and provided for you all these years?" my mom asked me, clearly trying to manipulate me. My parents pushed me down on my bed and started yelling at me to get me to stay. This went on for a long time. So long that I was getting desperate. And then Louisa and Oscar burst through the door. My parents jumped them, but Louisa and Oscar were stronger than both of them. Get in the car, go, Oscar said to me while holding back my dad. I locked myself into the car, only opening the doors when I saw Louisa and Oscar running towards me. We were all so shocked at what happened. Louisa and Oscar were having a conversation on whether my parents were dangerous for my siblings in the front of the car. But I was just thinking about how I was going to write the ultimate college essay.
Get off my
I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't so much as a target, let alone anything interesting for a teenager like myself to spend his days. So,
Dude, you're a faggot.
We would be going on a trip to a campsite. I jumped on board immediately. It would only be myself and my dad. My mom had passed away 5 years ago. You see, my mom had died whilst hiking in the woods. We never found her body, but a knife had been found at the scene with her blood on it. The police confirmed she had been murdered. They managed to catch the criminal who killed her. I didn't know who the murderer was, nor why they did
They're
it.
ready to fight.
I was still traumatized from it.
Daunting
I
your
missed her
enemy is an
every
effective way
day.
to get inside their heads.
But I was still beyond excited. I loved my dad, and I was looking forward to a weekend away with him. But before I dive into this creepy story, make sure you like and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any more creepy content. We packed our bags, hopped in the car, and started driving. My dad never told me where we were going. He said it would be a surprise. I was just happy to get out of the house. We drove and drove for what seemed like days,
Win this
but
fight
was
and you return
probably
to the front
only a few
line, but
hours.
if you lose,
Eventually,
you're done.
we reached the campsite. I wrinkled my
Beat them
nose
down
as
or
we
capture
stepped
the
out of the
objective.
car. The cabin where we were going to be staying at was all run down and derelict. I was surprised it was still standing. Its wood seemed infested with termites. Do we really have to stay here? I asked my dad. He ruffled my hair. Come on, sport. It isn't that bad, he chuckled. It looked pretty bad to me, but I kept my mouth shut, and we brought our things into the cabin. Then something strange happened. My dad was back in the cabin, unpacking our bags, and he asked me to grab a blanket from the trunk. As I made my way back to the car, I felt someone move behind me. I turned around to find this woman standing in front of me, eyes bulging in their sockets, staring me dead in the face. She was wearing what seemed to be an old jumpsuit, orange in color. Was she a prisoner? Can I help?
Bro!
I asked nervously. She just kept staring at me. Then she opened her mouth.
Wow.
Is he here? She asked in a shaky voice. I didn't understand her question, so I didn't reply. She took a step forward and I freaked out. I sprinted into the cabin, shutting the door with a bang. I peeked out through the curtains, watching her cautiously. She hadn't moved from the spot. She was just standing there.